Imagine this. You are not watching this video by accident. People don't usually click on this kind of topic just for fun. Most of the time, something heavy has happened in their life. Not just a bad day, not just a rough period. The kind of thing after which your life quietly splits into before and after. Or maybe it did not happen to you, but to someone you love, and you can see how a part of them is still stuck back there, not fully returned from what happened. For a lot of people, the story seems to end at that point. They find one word that covers everything: trauma. And with that word comes a silent conclusion. This is who I am now, broken, damaged, and that is it. I'm not going to tell you. Just get over it and move on. That is not how the mind works, and it is not how respect works. But I do want to offer you a different angle. What happened to you is absolutely real. And at the same time, how long it continues to run your life is not only about the facts, it is about the meaning your mind put on those facts. Let me tell you a story about someone I have known for more than 40 years. I will call him Theo. Theo did not grow up in a soft, safe childhood. His father was in the French Foreign Legion and was almost never home. When Theo was 3 years old, his mother was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. He, his brother, and his sister were taken away and placed in different foster families. On paper, that's called care. In reality, that is when the real nightmare started. In one of those homes, his foster father did things to him that no child should ever have to go through. Punishment could look like this: a winter night below zero, a small boy in thin pajamas locked out on the balcony, while inside it was warm and bright, and life just went on. For the adults, this was strict discipline. For the child, it was cold, terror, and the feeling that he did not matter to anyone. Later, he was moved to another family. The most extreme things stopped, but that does not mean life suddenly became safe. There was still no deep sense of, I am home, I am wanted, I belong here. If you bring the story to a classic psychotherapist, it very easily goes into the folder, severe childhood trauma. And the standard work around that is many years of talking, remembering, reliving, analyzing, going through all of it again and again. There is logic in that. Theo did all of that. He told his story so many times that he stopped counting. He told it to therapists, psychiatrists, coaches, people close to him. He cried in offices, shook, got angry, collapsed, and came back to those moments over and over again. The scenes became sharper, the words became more precise, but the deep knot inside did not really move. Today he no longer lives in that frozen childhood. He has a job, he has a woman he loves. There are children in his life he cares about. He can make plans and genuinely laugh, not just put on the I'm fine mask. His past has not disappeared. What changed is how he holds it on the inside. At some point he had to face two things, very honestly. First, his past does influence him. It shapes reactions, fears, patterns, but it does not have to dictate his entire future. Second, he's not guilty for what adults did to him. But from the moment he clearly sees what was happening, he is responsible for what he does with it now. Not responsible for the event itself, but for the meaning he continues to give it. This is where we come to the part that many old school specialists are not comfortable with. At a certain moment, Theo had to stop automatically calling everything my trauma. Not because it suddenly became small or unimportant. Not because he should stop dramatizing, but because that one word had become a huge container where everything was thrown together. The events, the child's feelings, his beliefs about himself, the shame, the fear, and finally the identity. I'm like this because of my trauma. Trauma had stopped being just a description of a wound and had quietly become his name. In reality, there are two different layers. There is what actually happened, and there is the meaning you gave it. Especially when you were very young. A child does not think, there's something deeply wrong with this adult. This is about their instability and their choices, not my worth. A child feels something else. There's something wrong with me. I must deserve this. I must be bad. I am not lovable. The world is not safe. Those early conclusions cut very deep. If you then keep replaying the story only through that old pain, your brain is basically practicing staying in that state. Every retelling keeps confirming. I am a victim. I am broken. This is who I am forever. The turning point for Theo did not come when he forgot. It came when he started to separate, inside himself, the facts from the old meaning. He stopped telling himself only this version. I am worthless. Nobody protected me. They could throw me on a balcony and forget about me. Instead, he began to describe what actually happened, as if he was watching a film without commentary, not to excuse the adults, but to reclaim reality. An evening in the kitchen, a childish, slightly funny moment with a stolen cookie. Footsteps coming down the corridor, the sharp smell of alcohol when the door opened, the sudden cold air on his skin as he was pushed out onto the balcony, the tiles under his feet, the little corner where the wind was slightly less brutal, his small body shaking, the snow moving in the light from the room, the stars above. Then, at some point, someone finally picking him up and carrying him back inside. The feeling of a blanket over his shoulders. None of this is there to say, look, it was not so bad. It is there to anchor one simple truth. This is what a grown man chose to do. This is what a small child had to endure. And this speaks about him, about his choices, not about my value as a human being. I know the man who made those choices. There have been complaints and legal attempts against him. His status and his political connections are still strong. The injustice is very real. And yes, the anger you might feel about that is completely valid. But here's the hardest part of the truth. If Theo wants to live a life that is bigger than the harm that was done to him, he cannot wait for the world to go back in time and fix his past. He has to ask himself a different question. How much space are these events going to take in my life from now on, if no one else can decide that for me anymore? And the answer does not sound like, it never happened. That would be a lie. It sounds more like, yes, it happened. Yes, it was wrong and it hurt. Yes, it affected me. But I will no longer give it the same meaning I gave it when I was a child. I will stop calling it with a word that tightens around my throat every time I say it. It is no longer my eternal trauma. It is a heavy, painful, but finished chapter of my past. The moment he started to talk about it in that way, some space appeared inside. Because the event stayed a fact, but the old childhood interpretation was no longer the absolute truth about who he is. And that is where this becomes about you. What happened to you will not disappear from your story, but the meaning you keep giving it is not carved in stone. You do not have to look at it forever through the eyes of that younger you, who once decided, I am bad. I am nothing. There is something wrong with me. Back then, those meanings were a survival strategy. They kept you alert, kept you from trusting dangerous people, kept you small enough to avoid more punishment. They helped you in a world that was not safe. But you're not that child anymore. And at some point, you are allowed to say, the event happened. It was real and it was heavy. But I'm no longer going to make it the center of who I am. I'm going to stop sticking the word trauma onto myself every day. I will let the facts stay facts, and I will slowly start to loosen the old meaning that grew around them. You are not betraying your younger self when you do that. Quite the opposite. For the first time, you become the adult that child never had. The one who can look them in the eyes and say, what they did to you was wrong. It never had anything to do with your worth. That night is over. You survived it. You are out of there. And now we will decide together how much space this story gets in our life. Your past will always be part of your path, but the meaning you give it today decides whether it keeps running your present or simply becomes a chapter in a much bigger book with your name on the cover.